Our next panel is something I personally look forward. I'm very interested in this topic. It features Sarah Matt from the University of Innsbruck. She is the idea giver and the moderator. And we welcome as well Bernhard Astner, partner at HBA Lawyers, Jörg Schönbachler, partner of BDO Austria, and Elmar Pichel, head of the Higher Education section at the Federal Ministry of Education, Science and Research. And these four people are going to discuss about tech transfer, how it really works and where the problems are. And I think this discussion will help us a lot to understand both sides, the university and the investors and startups. Welcome, Sarah.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure for me to be the moderator of this important panel. I'm going to share my screen with you because I have prepared a few slides to start the discussion going. I'm Sarah Matt from Innsbruck. I am the head here of the Transfer Center for Science, Economy and Society. And it's a real pleasure to lead this panel on Austrian tech transfer in practice because I am a practitioner now for already 17 years and I have seen a lot at universities and spin-offs and I'm very passionate about this topic. Just that you have a little bit of background where I come from, the University of Innsbruck is a comprehensive university. That means we are dealing with all faculties. We have a lot of diverse inventions and spin-offs, about 3,500 researchers and 30,000 students. And we try to make them all entrepreneurial as much as possible. Tech transfer in Innsbruck has a long tradition and is organized in two organizational units. We have the Project Service Office, which is the IPR help desk and helps researchers from the idea to commercialization, but mainly regarding patenting and licensing. Then we also have, in addition, the Transfer Center, which is doing the spin-off support and also managing the university holding. In addition, we do industry cooperation and we support all activities which enhance the entrepreneurial mindset of our researchers and students. That means we are running a student incubator, we support researchers in fellowship programs, and we are part in several international entrepreneurship relevant projects and initiatives. The spin-off process was discussed already a lot, so I'll just give a short summary what spin-off in our definition means. Researchers, employees of the university disclose an invention, a software or commercializable know-how. University claims ownership if we see a commercial potential or if there are other strategic reasons. Then we do meetings together with the inventors and together we decide what is the best way to commercialize it. And in case we do a spin-off, then the usual way starts. The inventors build up a team of founders. We support the founders in business plan writing, funding acquisition, like pre-seed or fellowships, and also in drafting the relevant contracts. But then at some point, we also have to negotiate IP issues, and here the problem sometimes really starts. We have to decide whether to give a license or to sell the patent, take we shares or should we not take shares. So we will discuss later with our panelists what problems can arise here. Hopefully a spin-off is founded despite all difficulties and it's growing, it needs money, investors are involved, so that is what we are aiming for. But as mentioned, for a long time, we are supporting everyone and we are the friend of the spin-off, and at some point we become the enemy or the opponent because we have to negotiate these unpleasant things like IP issues. And we have a really strong framework where we have to work in, like we have the state aid issue and so on, but I have experts in the panel who will discuss this. Despite all difficulties, we are successful. We have founded like 30 spin-offs the last years. In 21, we are actively shareholding. And you can see here there are all various kinds of spin-offs from all different disciplines. And I can say that some of them are really promising. I want to start the discussion now doing a very brief SWOT analysis of the university spin-off situation. Most of this we have already heard, but just a short summary. Of course, there are a lot of strengths and opportunities, like there is an enormous knowledge pool, we have highly innovative people, we have a very good research infrastructure, we can evaluate inventions and support business plan developments, we have money for patents, market research, and experience in spinning out. So many good reasons why we should do more spin-offs. There are also a lot of opportunities for both universities and spin-offs because we have these excellent relations to research for further collaboration. We can get new ideas for spin-offs, but also for university. And very important for us that there is a career perspective for researchers to work in a highly innovative spin-out. And for the spin-outs, it's good to have a pool of new employees. Of course, we are also responsible for regional development, and we want to build a diverse and dynamic ecosystem. And success in spinning out, of course, breaks down prejudice towards universities. But this is, of course, easy. That's the good points. But we have a lot of weaknesses, and I'm happy to share this then with our panelists and explore on that. Of course, it's a long way from basic research to market, but that's not the main problem. The main problem is the lack of understanding of commercial activities in general in the research community. Sometimes the entrepreneurial mindset is missing, not only in the research base, but also in the university government. Of course, not in all universities. And then the applicable governance and support structures for the startup world, they are sometimes really not well prepared. We also have to deal with awareness and compliance, like state aid regulations, competition law, or also to calculate the real amount of an inventor's bonus can be quite difficult. There's too much room for interpretation, and I agree with all the speakers before that we need some kind of standards and measures to take in place that this can be faster and more efficient. And of course, the threats are also not to neglect. Some universities are not even supporting spin-offs. In some cases, we only think that. Or universities are too slow and complicated in decision-making. I also have to agree here. And sometimes we have the prejudice that we ask for too much money for IP. And one of our panelists will go back to this point and elucidate a little bit. And the expectations towards spin-offs from universities are also very complicated and not homogeneous. Some unprepared researchers, they expect too much. It's a long way from the idea to a commercial company. And we have heard today several founder stories which really highlight this problem. The interest of investors, if we have some, which is good, is there, but sometimes their interests match not really ours or the ones of the inventors. And of course, we have this big conflict of interest. Should a researcher be a founder at the same time, or should they decide which route they want to take? So these are the major points we want to address, and I close now my presentation because we go now to the panel. And I ask the other people to elucidate on this topic. And Yasmin has already introduced our panelists, so I can save a few minutes here. I just want now to hand over to our first panelist, which is Elmar Pichel. They're working for the ministry since 2007, even the Director General since 2013, and a very important person for universities because we have to negotiate our performance contracts with the ministry. And often we discuss with Elmar Pichel several KPIs. And one of the new KPIs is the number of spin-offs. So I'm working for a long time at universities and I know how these performance agreements works. So I would like now to address the question to you. What's the ministry exactly going to do in the next years? What is the plan? I guess you're not simply counting the numbers of new spin-offs, but are also putting in place some measures to support us here. So please, Elmar Pichel, let us know your situation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sarah, for the introduction and the question. As Federal Minister Heinz Fassmann has already stated today, I hope he did in this conference, knowledge and technology transfer is one of the main core topics of the negotiations on the performance agreements with the public universities for the next 3 years period. And with this focus, we want to ensure that the enormous innovation potential of universities is used to the maximum and research results are converted into innovations as much as possible. Knowledge transfer, knowledge and technology transfer must be in the university's DNA as a permanent integral part of their future strategic development. And that's a kind of culture change. And that's much more difficult than the definition of key performance indicators. So, but it is therefore important to really firmly anchor key areas of action in the future performance agreements, and actually not only in the written agreements, but in the real culture of university actions. And the main topics for the next 3 years are First, of course, further strengthening the technology transfer offices, the TTOs. TTOs are an important factor for the efficient commercialization of academic inventions. And they advance new technologies from basic research to the extent that technology transfer and exploitation can take place. The successful work of TTOs should be emphasized much more strongly. Clear goals and measures, as well as a close connection to the rectorate, should increase the effectiveness even further. So to hire the management awareness and management attention to the topic of technology transfer. Second, the cooperation with business. Universities must become more visible to the economy. The active willingness to cooperate must be increased. For instance, universities should provide essential information and technology offers in a compact and easy to find way, and on a regular basis to the stakeholders, to the students, to the PhD students, and of course to the scientists. Third, the promotion of IP and entrepreneurship skills through establishment of innovation platforms and spaces. So let's call it maker spaces, joint labs, cooperation, co-labs, whatever. Fourth, the strategy for enhancing and intensifying knowledge transfer and entrepreneurship is expected to be enrolled at each university through the next years, if there no strategy in place. Preferable, of course, in cooperation with the relevant stakeholders in the region and of course beyond the region. The fifth point is the number of spin-offs needs to be increased. Sarah told already about it. We still need more support measures for future spin-off founders. Just to name a few measures: coachings, mentoring, cooperation with startup support facilities, even outside the university, venture capitalists, and the development of standardized spin-off frameworks. That's one of the most important instruments we have talked about with the universities, and it's sometimes really difficult to introduce new concepts of thinking into the in German it's the Soziolekt, so in the terminology of the rectorates speaking and thinking. Clear target indicators are to be anchored in the performance agreements, but of course not with the blueprint. The universities are too different, but for each university we have designed and defined clear indicators. So the last point is the stronger the exchange between the different stakeholders, the better knowledge transfer works. So networks need to be strengthened. For instance, close cooperation with the TTOs within the regional knowledge transfer centers, and the participation in national and international programs must be increased. So there are programs and instruments, spin-off fellowships, EIC Pathfinder, EIT prototypes, and so on. So I hope I could give you an impression about the portfolio of instruments or measures we try to implement at the university's culture, and of course, real activities in the next years. Thank you.
Thank you, Elmar Bichler. I think that was a very good summary of what you could do and what you will do. And I'm very confident that we will succeed, because in 2004, when we started tech transfer, there was nothing, and now we are really a long way from there, and we can do a lot, and I'm sure that it will be even improved in the future. But let's assume that we have already done a lot in education of researchers. They are well prepared, they are willing to spin out. Then there are still a lot of issues which we have to overcome, and I'm really glad that we have such a good panel. Like the next panelist I want to address is Jörg Schönbacher. He has also a legal background, works in Graz, and he is very specialized also in IP valuation and an expert on state aid issues and competition law, because these are the little problems which we often have to cope with, because the founders and also sometimes the investors, they are not aware of this strong legal environment we have to work in. And so I would like to address now the question to Jörg. What do you think? Are the founders aware of these issues, and how can we help to make more transparent processes and structures so that we all save money, time, and a lot of discussions? Please, Jörg.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah, for the intro and for this important question. The answer, unfortunately, is a yes and no. I think the awareness of the issue is increasing, but still we are not finally there that we have a, I think, joint understanding of the playing field we have to work in. Universities, as they are publicly funded, have to adhere to the state aid law regulation of the European Union, meaning that, of course, every transfer of IP into a spin-off leads to legal questions you have to deal with. But that shouldn't be an excuse for delaying spin-off processes. I think we have already instruments at hand that if we share them as a best practice could help to really solve the issue of state aid law. What is important is have a transparent process in place where you educate not only students but researchers, the whole university management about the regulatory field you're working in, and then try to derive with a transparent process for researchers who want to fund the company what they have to expect. And what they have to expect is that the university needs to transfer IP on a fair market value, so that in the end, all of us who have, as taxpayers, funded the research at universities have a competitive landscape where it is fair how the IP is transferred. How can you do that with often groundbreaking new IP early stage in the patent cycle? So nobody really knows what to do with it. And there are still already good models you can adapt. For example, we have in Germany, as in Austria, we have a standard norm here for patent valuation, where you have a good idea how to evaluate IP already at an early stage, how to look at the legal risk you're still having from the IP, how to look at the commercial value. And if you then opt for a licensing model, given the rare case law you are having on competition law here in Europe, you are already on a good first step. So if you go for a license, then it will be easier for you to derive with a state aid lawfare approach, because still with a royalty-based model, you will participate on a market success anyhow. How to evaluate now the royalty amount you need to get on a running basis. Again, you have databases coming from the IP and already from company valuation databases where you see published license deals around the world, and per industry segment, you can still derive with a corridor where you can negotiate with a spin-off a fair deal, which if you document it in a transparent process, will be fine from a state aid law perspective, will be fine for your internal control within university processes, which is from my experience as well, a very important topic, so that the rectorate in the end feels safe that they didn't give the IP too cheap to an external partner, be it a spin-off or be it in another license, a research partner in the industry. And I think what really is the next step we need to take together is bring transparent processes in all universities, adapt best practice models, and then share this best practice within the university communities, so that you as a practitioner in tech transfer, as a practitioner in spin-off field, really have a good understanding what can be a fair approach. And I think to achieve that, it's easy to have the university perspective from a regulatory end, but still you need to take into account what a founder needs to do with his company. Of course, always cash is king. So if you tend to opt for models which bring the cash burden to the company on a later stage, that may be an advantage for them. And still, if you educate investors that it's in their key interest that they have a legally safe deal where you can transfer the IP correctly and don't have the risk of any void contract 5 years after, I think then you are on the safe side. So bring the stakeholder together in a transparent process and use models we already have in the valuation sphere. I think that would be one important part. Second important part is, of course, if you can standardize some of the legal framework, that would help to have I think a reduced fear on a researcher, of course, all in this company foundation is new. And if already the first step, meaning having the research results, they often contributed to themselves bringing into a company, if that's difficult and unclear and maybe long, then that won't be the best starting point. So again, here I think transparency on what to expect as a researcher, a PhD, a student who want to found a company based on university IP is important. But it's important on the other side, I think, for all the researchers to understand, although it's their intellectual property, it's the intellectual property from a legal perspective of the university. Although it's their baby and they want to have the best out of their results, still it's important to know that from a legal and commercial perspective, of course, university paid for it, so university owns it, and university can't give it for free.
Thanks. So that was very good to hear from a sound lawyer, that a law person, that this is really the framework we are working in, and you have highlighted very important points. And I'm happy that we are in a workshop together where we will work on standards which we can then share, because we all want to support spin-offs. But yeah, as already mentioned several times, it has to be fair and in a legal, safe way. There are even more issues which we have to address if we want to have more and better spin-offs. And I'm happy that we have a third panelist here. Bernhard Astner is managing partner in his law firm, also in Graz, and he also studied law in Graz. So that's a fun fact that I'm here sitting with 3 people who studied law in Graz. So I'm the only person not doing that. I studied physics in Innsbruck, but funny that we share a panel. And he is an expert on commercialization structures and also on corporate law. He's doing a lot of different things besides his job in his own company. He's teaching at the university, and he's also a board member of several executive and advisory boards and in foundations. So I have a question to you, which regards the structure of spin-offs. So is it really a good idea to have maybe 100% committed founder, or should all the inventors become shareholders so that the company is fully motivated with all potential contributors? What is the ideal structure? And do you think from your experience that researchers who found a spin-off, that they are aware of the various roles which have to be taken in a spin-off? What is the best structure? And are they really, do they know what they are doing if they are becoming shareholders? And do they know their responsibilities? I think teams is a very important asset for investments and so on. But I think it's difficult for researchers and also sometimes for universities to find out which people we need in a team. So what is your perspective and your experience here in this situation? I think you are still muted.
Thanks, Sarah, for the intro also from my side. From an investor's point of view, it needs to be said that they typically invest not only in technology or in a business plan, they invest in a team. So the team of the founders has to be fully committed to the project. They need to identify themselves with the project, with the startup, as their own baby. So in general terms, the team needs to be committed to the project. They need to set up a structure that motivates each of the stakeholder to enable growth in revenue and in profit. So that is what an investor wants to see within the shareholder team. So if an inventor really wants to be part of the founder team, they need to be 100% committed to the project. Of course, if an inventor wants to stay within the scientific community, he's not at all excluded from being part of the shareholder structure, but the portion of shares he's owning in the new company, in the startup, is usually in relation to the risk he's taking. So the more risk he's taking, the more he's committed to the project, the more then investors are willing to give shares to the inventor or the founder. And but of course there are other models that could be used as like cooperation agreements where inventors stay within the academy and invest a certain amount of hours or certain time a week or a month or a year to the common project, but in the end they will have less shares in the company. That's the game. And the structure between all the shareholders, especially in the beginning, needs just to be one. It must be simple and it must be fair. So that everybody has the feeling that he's, let's say, well motivated by the shares he's got in the company.
Yes, thanks. That was very good that you mentioned the point that researchers should be either founders or if they want to stay both, it's a difficult challenge, but it's possible, it's doable. We have several spin-offs where the founders are still research and it works really fine, but it always depends on the situation. I just saw that we have a few questions also from the audience, and I think one we should tackle immediately because Emma Bichl has to leave on time. So I have one question to you. It is asked, what are the plans of the ministry in respect of makerspaces? Will there be at some point money to kind of trigger the entrepreneurial spirit already very early on so that also students can try if they have a good idea?
Yeah, that's a very important question. Only a few days ago, we had an event and workshop together with stakeholders of the universities and beyond. So to discuss this question whether we should count with the category of room and space like maker spaces as a cornerstone of the future development of university spaces. And the clear answer out of the community, and it's also our conviction that we have to count with maker spaces in the development of university spaces. So we will hopefully in a good way enable the universities to create maker spaces, to build maker spaces, or to change existing rooms. That's maybe also an option to create functional rooms which could serve as maker spaces. So it's not possible to talk about knowledge transfer and innovation and the new visions of universities without creating and enabling universities to create such spaces and environments.
Okay. We have here a statement from Ingrid Kelly. She says that shareholding in spin-offs should reflect risk. The full-time operating team should hold the majority. I absolutely agree, but who in the panel wants to discuss with Ingrid that point? Who wants to address it? The commitment of researchers, the risk-taking part?
I can only say fully agree with this statement. You need to take entrepreneurial risk to be founder in a company. And if you want to hold the majority shareholding in a company, you need to spend full time on bringing this company forward. And it shouldn't be some alternative to an inventor's premium or just a license component to the inventor. And I think it's better really, and you really should emphasize this early on in founding a company. Everybody should play the part he can play well. And maybe it's good to have a certain researcher. Is this relevant for the field still as a research partner or a research advisor? Yes, but maybe not at chief operational officer of a company.
Yeah, I think that's a very important take-home message, that the roles should be clear, and you can of course contribute, but in so many different ways. It doesn't have to be a shareholding position or a CEO position. I think that's a really message which we should take home. I see on my clock that we have now 2 more minutes, so I would like to ask the panelists for their major points they want to give us as take-home messages, because then we have to close the panel in order to be not too late for the next session. So please, maybe Elmar Bichl, you start, and same.
Yeah. No, I'm really very, very grateful for this panel here, since the people discussing here important issues are, let's say, people or experts who has to cooperate in the future much more intensively. So all these open questions has to be answered for scientists and all the people that working at universities. So the legal questions and the frameworks and so on. I think this exchange and the creating of information for interested people, that's a very, very important mission for us together in the next years.
Yeah, please.
Same from my end. I think it's a joint mission for all of us who believe in the power of research for the welfare of all of us. And I think that's really important. What should we achieve? We're not already in place. We should implement a strategy for spin-offs in the university strategy and bring full management attention to it. And we should really help all the practitioners we're already having in Austrian universities to even create more successful entrepreneurial stories. How can we do that? If we give them standards, processes, tools, who are already out there somewhere in the international markets, and help them by these standards and tools with their job. That needs, of course, budget and resources, and that will need a lot of interaction on best practice examples.
Very good. Bernhard Astner.
I just want to address all the potential founders here. Don't be scared about failing. The possibility of failing is part of the game. And what is need to be done is to create a culture and an atmosphere that failing is not something very negative. It's just simply in every project, you have the chance to fail, but you have also a good chance to make a good job and to make your baby successful. And you just need to think about the positive aspects of every project. And this is something missing here in Central Europe, especially here in Austria. And we need to change our mindsets in that respect.
Thank you. Now, I hope that we could show in this panel that we really want to encourage young people to found spin-offs, that we also strongly want to help and support, but it all has to be done in a fair and legal way. I think that's just the circumstances as they are. And there is also one question I just want to mention, the main output. They say that the spin-offs have different legal and fiscal situations in all countries. And that is a difference we just have to keep in mind when comparing numbers from one country to the other. It's not the same situation everywhere, and we are still lacking a few changes in the tax law, maybe that investing in spin-offs is somehow honorated. But I think we are on the right way, and I hope together with all the relevant stakeholders, we will improve the situation, and we have next year even better statistics, and in 10 years, we are maybe better than Swiss already, Switzerland. So thank you all for contributing to this panel, and I hand over back to Yasmin and Daniel. Yeah, perfect. Goodbye.